This is Dr. Ishtiaq Ahmed, and I'm addressing my friends on the discussion in Pakistan and elsewhere on the concept of a theocracy and the argument forwarded by not only Muhammad Ali Jinnah, a whole range of Muslim modernists and the fundamentalists, that in Islam there is no theocracy. Of course, this is true. Islam does not prescribe a theocracy. What is a theocracy? Originally, it's the government of the prophets. So, as long as Prophet Muhammad was in power, he was the lawgiver, revealed to him according to Muslim belief by God. He was the chief law adjudicator, that is the chief judge in the state of Medina. He was the chief administrator. He was the head of the executive as well. After his death, all these three functions of the state and the claim on which Islamic belief is based, that Prophet Muhammad was protected from error, the inerrancy of the Prophet. This is attributed to all the Abrahamic prophets. So, a government by the prophets would be the ideal theocracy. And Prophet Muhammad's period of ruling at Medina, those 10 years, I think, or 12 years, would be the case of a perfect theocracy. Upon his death, there were two main theories which came up. The theory of Caliphate or Khilafat and the theory of Imamat. The theory of Khilafat or Caliphate is the mainstream Sunni political theory, which says that with Prophet Muhammad, the office of prophethood ended, and so also ended the perfect theocracy. Thereafter, his successors, the caliphs, were interpreting the law revealed in the Quran and in the life of Prophet Muhammad, the decisions he took, the Sunnah of the Prophet, as it is called. So, enforcing the Sharia, the divine law, is then the purpose of the Islamic state or the Muslim state. In the minority position, the Shia position, the idea was that indeed direct revelation from God ended with Prophet Muhammad, but through Ali and his descendants, uh, the successors, spiritual successors, political successors, whatever you want to call it, the Imams were also masoom, that is, protected from error. The only difference being that while the Prophet was directly receiving revelation, the Imams were divinely inspired. So they alone could understand how to implement the divine Sharia. But according to the mainstream Shia sect that we have, also in Pakistan, after the 12th Imam, who has gone into occultation, that is, he's invisible. According to Shia belief, he is in the world but invisible. So the Shia ulema, the Shia clergy, if you want to call it, have claimed that they represent the will of the Imam. So their interpretation then is, in a way, a form of theocracy. Among Sunnis, the Sharia interpretation with the caliphs And then with the Sunni Imams, the four Imams, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, Imam Malik, and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. Their fiqh jurisprudence then is an elaboration of the Sharia, the divine law, which means that in both cases it's some human beings who are interpreting the Sharia, the law of God. Okay? So now when Muhammad Ali Jinnah is on record saying that there is no theocracy in Islam, and so does Maulana Maududi, the main ideologue of Sunni Islam in Pakistan, and any other Sunni scholar of any substance, they would say this: no theocracy in Islam. And I think they are right. But from this, it does not follow. This is the logical fallacy which some people, opportunistically or maybe without understanding, conclude from this. They infer from this that since there is no theocracy, democracy is then the natural form of government for any Muslim state. I think that's, I don't think, I think, let me say, it's not that I think, the conclusion is that to say that Islam doesn't prescribe a theocracy does not mean that it prescribes a democracy. So then, how to describe the Islamic, Muslim, modern or conservative or fundamentalist idea of the sovereignty of Sharia? Let's say that in the case of Iran, under Ayatollah Khomeini and now Imam Khamenei, they established during the life of Khomeini, he was the Rahbar, the supreme leader, whose word was law. It could not be questioned. And the Iranian constitution established a board with 6 scholars of Islamic law and 6 modernist scholars. And the procedure was that any law passed by the Iranian parliament, the Majlis, had to be approved by this board before it could be accepted as law. Okay? So, in a way, the clergy has a sort of veto power in Iran in interpreting the Sharia, the will of what is revealed in the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet, and the rulings of the Imams, and then the Shia ulema. And among the Shia, there is a hierarchy of priests, clerics. Ayatollah Khomeini is one, and then there are many other competing Ayatollahs, but they follow a hierarchy. Whereas among the Sunni, there are muftis and mushtahids and so on, but there is no established hierarchy of priests or of clerics, of the ulema. So the question is, if Islam is not a theocracy and it's not a democracy either that it prescribes, how to describe it? Let me first of all refer to a speech given by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan, on the 19th of March 1944 in Lahore, in which he said, I warn the communists, hands off, hands off. We don't want you in the Muslim League. We have our Islamic ideology to guide us. We don't want the red or the yellow isms. We have our green and white flag. And so he warned the communists, do not join the Muslim League to subvert our ideology. But the Communist Party of India, under the so-called Adhikari thesis of 1942, advised Muslim communists to join the Muslim League. The Communist Party of India did join the Muslim League and try to make the Muslim League a progressive organization. And many of them actually did. We had in Lahore, in Punjab, for example, Sia Aslam, Abdullah Malik, Mia Iftikharuddin, who was the main patron of these communists, but was previously in the Congress Party, and so many others. They joined the Muslim League and became its strong supporters. They would take part in the Muslim League election campaign, while the ulama, who Muhammad Ali Jinnah had mobilized for the 1945-46 election campaign, went around preaching that in future Islam, perfect Islamic justice will prevail. And we will create an ideal Islamic state based on the praxis of the Prophet and his successors. And I've given many examples in my book on the Punjab partition as well as in the one on Jinnah. The communists started saying that we will abolish the outstanding debts of the Hindu moneylender and liberate the oppressed Muslim peasantry and so on. Although Hamza Alvi has said that once the Hindu moneylender was gone, the need for a debt was always there. And it's the landlord who started then using the same peasants, Muslim landlords, making their women folk work at home as unpaid labor. He has written this, Hamza Alvi. People don't notice it. Anyhow, so that is one. Then on the 8th of September 1945, when the 1945 election campaign started, Jinnah gave the first speech in Karachi saying, Islam requires every Muslim to study the Quran because the Quran is the complete code of life. It prescribes international law, domestic law, criminal law, civil law, personal law, and the laws of war and peace. It's a complete code of law and constitution. So those who say that Jinnah never, himself used Islamic, arguments are of course either uneducated, uninformed, or they deliberately mislead people. And I've given many examples in my book on Jinnah where he's publicly said that Pakistan will be an Islamic state. There are 3 statements of one in November 1945 in Peshawar, and then on two more, other occasions the word Islamic state. Pakistan will be an Islamic state. But such an Islamic state will not be a theocracy. It will be a modern Muslim state. It will be this, that, is what Jinnah Sahib said. But also the fundamentalists have stuck to this position. No theocracy in Islam. So then what is the appropriate concept of term to be used to describe the Islamic Muslim state, which is not a theocracy and it's not a secular democracy either. That's the main point. Some of the terms which have been proposed, one is Theo-Democracy. This is by Sayyid Abul Ala Maududi, the main ideologue of the Islamic State in Pakistan, leader of the Jamaat-e-Islami. According to him, the explicit verses in the Quran which are of a legal nature are binding forever and they have to be applied literally. For example, the Hudud laws, the 4 or 5 punishments for crimes like adultery, fornication, highway robbery, thievery, and false accusation of adultery, things like this, and some other laws which are in the Quran. And then the practices of the Prophet, the praxis, the Sunnah of the Prophet has to be applied where it is explicit. Where the Sharia, the Quran, and the rulings of the Prophet are uh, not giving any clear cut direction, then Muslims have a right to apply their intelligence and derive laws for the modern era, the 20th, 21st centuries and onwards. This is called the theory of unoccupied areas. Unoccupied areas means that where the Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet lay down a rule, they have to be applied. But where there are situations where nothing of the sort exists, then one can generate new laws, but in the spirit of the Sharia. So that is Theo-Democracy, that the origin of the law is divine, but in areas where it has not clearly laid down a principle or a rule or a norm, then you can apply your own intelligence and through ijma, through collective opinion, arrive at a new law. So that's one. There is another term, theonomy, theonomy. It means the supremacy of the divine law. Actually, this idea has been made current in discussions in the Bible Belt of the United States. They want a revival of the Christian state based on the punishments prescribed in the Old Testament. And they tried it a few times in history as well. Okay? Then there's another term, nomocracy. Nomocracy means the supremacy of law. The law could be divinely prescribed or it could be the result of human deliberation and acceptance and whatever. But the law is supreme. The law cannot be challenged. So when we say that Pakistan or a Muslim state doesn't prescribe a theocracy, what everybody who believes in a Muslim Islamic state is trying to say is that Islam prescribes a divine law, Sharia, and the rules about the Sharia are very clear and it has to be implemented. Who will implement it? This was the question that in Pakistan was debated. And on the 7th of March 1949, the Objectives Resolution was presented, where it begins with a preamble. Sovereignty over the entire universe belongs to God, which He has delegated to the state of Pakistan to be exercised as a sacred trust by the elected representatives of the people. So, who will interpret? First of all, sovereignty belongs to God. So, sovereign supremacy of the Sharia is absolute. But who will interpret it? According to this formulation, the elected representatives of the people of Pakistan in the Constituent Assembly or in the Parliament of Pakistan. But later on, when work started on a sort of working towards a constitution for Pakistan, in the 1952 Basic Principles report, like Iran, it was recommended that a board of ulama should be created to whom all laws passed by the legislators were to be sent for them to be evaluated if they were according to Sharia or not. And if they were not, they could not become law. But in 1954, this board headed by the ulama primarily Sunni and then some Shia, was taken away. And so in the 56th constitution, there is no such board. But then an Islamic ideology council was established, and later on, a federal Shariat court was also established. And the Islamic Advisory Council does advise on the appropriateness of laws made by the Pakistani parliament. Its powers are advisory, not in Iran, where it's not advisory only, their word prevails over laws made by the parliament. So now in Pakistan, we can say that Pakistan can be, you can call it a Theo-Democracy if you like, or it is a Theonomy. The supreme law, which is the Sharia, its supremacy is established, and its interpretation should either belong to the ulama or it be shared between the ulama and the lay parliamentarians. And the third position would be that the supremacy of law as such. And which law? Essentially, the law is the law prescribed by Sharia. So, whatever terminology you use, what I want to argue is that unless a Muslim people decide to keep religion and politics separate, state separate, and establish a secular democratic state where the will of the people expressed through their elected representatives can freely make and unmake laws in the best interest of the people of Pakistan and in the best interest of the state of Pakistan. And this applies everywhere. Wherever Muslims are trying to establish a Muslim modern state and Islamic state and so on, there would be either a Theo-Democracy or sometimes maybe a Theonomy or a Nomocracy, but subject to the supremacy of the Sharia. So I thought, friends, I had to elaborate this, make it clear for people to understand. People say, but doesn't this ultimately mean that the ulama become the legitimate interpreters of the Sharia? And I've said this is not necessarily the case. The ulama do want to claim that right, but that has not been granted to them in the 56th Constitution or in the 62 Constitution or in the 73 Constitution. On the other hand, the Islamic Advisory Council and the Sharia bench and so on, and the hudud laws which have been included in the Constitution, they do lead ultimately to the supremacy of the Sharia. So I hope this clarifies the difference between, what people really mean when they say that in Islam there is no theocracy. From it does not follow that it means that a Muslim state or an Islamic state is a secular democracy. To make it a secular democracy, you have to make a conscious choice between keeping the Sharia private as a personal sort of thing and making the state make laws based on the will of the elected representatives of the people. They, of course, may still want Islam and so on, but that cannot be absolute. It can always be superseded by better laws, different laws. So when we say there is no theocracy in Islam, it doesn't mean that it leads to a modern type secular democracy. It leads to all other things where the supremacy of the Sharia, one way or another, is upheld vis-a-vis the will of the people, the elected representatives of the people. Thank you very much, my friends. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Your subscription enables me to reach out to more and more people. Thank you very much. All the best for now.